Well, hey there, small group hosts. We're on week number 4 of the grid, and so Ross and I are going to talk you through some of these questions. But before we even get to that, let me just remind you of what the big idea of this lesson is. It's about going all in. So we've talked about getting to your defining moment. Once you get the grid of Jesus in mind, then you get to this defining moment. And so today we're going to talk about sort of the next. If last week was the first step in the Pursue God circle, this week is step 2 and a little bit of step 3.
Yeah.
And next week we'll talk more about step 3 in that whole circle. So we're just talking about going all in. You know, baptism is a symbol of going all in, but really living a life to be obedient to Christ is what going all in is all about. So Matthew 28, the Great Commission is kind of our key verse where it's talking about making disciples and being obedient to everything I've commanded you. And so that's kind of where this lesson is going. Again, you can check out the video and all the related resources to know more about that. But Ross, let's skip down to some of these questions because I think that's what's most helpful for the small group hosts. So let's just go down here to question number 9, okay?
Okay.
In verse 18 of Matthew 28, why do you think Jesus reminds us of his authority? How would you encourage a small group host to be thinking about that question?
Yeah, we're going with that. It really relates to the whole concept of the grid series, that God has the right to call the shots, that really Jesus's perspective, we learned back in the second week that Jesus's perspective is really what defines our worldview. So he's the one who gets to decide, and we want to follow him. If he says, to make disciples or to baptize, whatever, then we're bound to that as his followers.
Yeah, so because he does, he says, all authority's been given to me, so listen up. Here's my commission.
And here's what I'm going to want you to do with that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then that leads into question 10 in verse number 20. Why do you think Jesus reminds us of his ongoing presence?
Yeah, that's how he ends the Great Commission, by promising to be with us always. And that's because it's not easy to fulfill his commission. It's not easy. So we need his empowerment. We need his encouragement, to go out to all the nations, even to go out of our comfort zone, to share the good news, or even to be obedient to him and do what he says. We require his empowerment. We require, him to come alongside and really be everything we need to succeed.
Yeah, and that's an encouragement for people that might feel like they might not be able to honor him with their daily life, or even that they might not have the courage to share truth with people in their world and become a mentor.
Right.
So, which we'll talk more about in the last lesson.
And this is really important for people maybe who are coming into faith for the first time, because a lot of assumptions people make is that a whole religious framework or faith framework is about me becoming a better person and pulling up myself by my bootstraps. And so for a person who's just adopting and embracing to following Jesus for the first time, we really want to encourage them that, hey, this is a supernatural life that's empowered by the presence of Christ with you.
Which really connects back to week 2, discussion number 7, or day number 7, where we talked about love God, love others as yourself. So if it's all about relationship with God and then proper relationship with others, it's neat that Jesus just said, I'll always be with you.
Right.
I'll have a relationship with you. I'm not sending you out and I'm ditching you.
Right.
His
Yeah,
presence.
let me know
is
if
there.
you make it,
Yeah, right. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then question 11 is really an important question. It relates to the takeaway. It says, using the where do you stand card, evaluate how all in you are right now. So now at your church, if you've used the card, it actually printed out a card. We'll do this at our church. They might actually have a physical card, but if you don't have it, it'll be right there in the lesson. The image will be right there in the lesson, and it's the Pursue God circle with just a couple little markers on there about getting to your faith moment or getting baptized and whatever else. How would you recommend a small group host use that card and use this question?
Right. So the reason we create this card is to help people come to a concrete application. Just not leave it vague. We really want people to think about, are they all in? We want to challenge them with that question and to think about it. The card as a way to focus that conversation. So as the small group host, you can pass this card around. If you have it tangibly, pass it around, give it to everybody, let them take a minute, and they can even mark it in the group, have a minute to reflect and do something with it right there. If somebody's not comfortable with that, they feel like somebody's looking over their shoulder, they could take it home, and evaluate it there, maybe talk to their spouse about it. But we really want to urge them to a concrete evaluation and using this vehicle.
Okay, so let's say the small groups do that. He gives them a minute to think about it, mark themselves, what does a small group host do next? Do they say, okay, everybody hold up, put your card on your forehead so everyone can see where you stand spiritually? Like, that could be awkward, right?
There's a lot of awkward things that could happen with this.
Okay.
Because it's an intimate, personal thing, and we don't want to make anybody feel embarrassed as they process this. So we're going to create a gracious environment for this, and it's okay to be wherever you're at. But I think that then the follow-up is, then again, like we talked about last week, you can make yourself available to say, look, take this and put it in your Bible to remind you, put it somewhere where you'll see it to remind you the decisions that you're making. But if you need to process that, talk about that, if you need help or support for someone to help you get there in the decision you're making, then come talk to me afterwards or give me a call. Let's get together. So there's some follow-up that we're asking you, the host, to be willing to make with that person in their life.
So this is probably a good chance to talk about, some groups might be done after next week, right? Because it's a 5-week group. Now, some of these small groups will continue to go. So how would you say, is this a time maybe to bring that up, the importance of small groups in moving forward? The importance of because the last thing we want is for people to mark this card and then everyone say, great, we'll see you later, see you in heaven someday, right?
Right.
Like, so if I'm a newcomer to the group, like what assurance what can I practically do to move forward now that I've outed myself and I'm right here?
Right.
What can I practically do to move forward in the weeks and months and years ahead?
Right. Now, listen, the whole point of the grid campaign is we're not checking off boxes. We're not just creating structure. We're really trying to help people take their next steps in their pursuit of God. And so that means real people making real decisions. And the small groups are a structure for that to happen. But so we want you as a host, by now you're thinking about, is our group going to continue beyond the grid? And hopefully as a host, you've had an opportunity to experience how impactful this can be, and the Holy Spirit might be leading you to move forward with this group. And this is one reason why you might want to consider doing that, is because you've got people who are grappling with God and making decisions. So your group may go on. We hope that will happen. If you've decided, or your group's decided not to keep meeting, then we want to give everybody in the group an opportunity to be part of a group. So we're going to help people make that transition. Okay. But
to another group,
or
to an individual mentor.
To a mentoring relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. And so maybe you're not in a place where you could lead the group on an ongoing basis, but you could mentor someone in the group. And we can help you understand how to do that and set you up to do that. So we just want to make sure it's really about making disciples who make disciples. And so these are next steps for all of us. Whether you're a group host, you become a leader, a mentor in some way, or whether someone in your group is making those next steps, we want to make sure that we provide the avenues for that to take place.
So obviously that'll be something you'll have to talk about with your pastor or your small group pastor or director, whatever. So this is a good time to start thinking about it, though, week 4, to think, if my group's not going to go on, I want to make sure that I get them connected with a group that is going to continue to go on. Or if it is, then I'm going to encourage them to keep coming, and we'll continue to grow and move forward in our faith.
Right. And as a small group host or leader in the future, how can I have a mentoring relationship with some of the people in my group?
And again, there's mentor training in our resources that help you to know how to use our resources to mentor someone, because when we use that word, we're not talking in generic terms. There's super simple process and methodology and resources for coming alongside someone and mentoring them. And actually, we'll kind of cover that next week, because in week 5, we're going to talk about going out into the world. And we're going to really land on that last thing in the circle, which is to help someone pursue God. And so we'll talk more about sharing truth and love, not being a jerk when you go out into the world with this new grid. So that'll be next week. But you should be ready now to lead your small groups for week number 4.